Welcome back. The Liminal SP and the Van Cortlandt Park Alliance are collaborating to reimagine the enslaved African burial ground in Van Cortlandt Park. This project, supported by the Mellon Foundation, aims to create a dynamic memorial space that honors the memory of enslaved Africans who built the park. Joining me now is the Arts Integration Strategist for Van Cortlandt Park Alliance, Ashley Hart Adams. Ashley, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm really, really honored to be here.
Yeah, and I'm excited, obviously, to talk about what is going on now and something that I was mentioning to you, long awaited. But first off, break it down for me a little bit. What is the Van Cortlandt Park Alliance?
So Van Cortlandt Park Alliance, we support the ecology, recreation, culture, arts of Van Cortlandt Park overall.
Yeah, and of course now through that as well mission of just supporting these different initiatives within the park, talk to me about how this new initiative comes to play.
Yeah, so this new initiative is called Reimagining the Enslaved African Burial Ground in Van Cortlandt Park. We're collaborating with Design Trust for Public Space, the artist Emmanuel Oni, and we're funded by the Mellon Foundation. And essentially what we're trying to do is to bring to the forefront the history and humanity of the enslaved people that once inhabited Van Cortlandt Plantation prior to it being Van Cortlandt Park. And we're giving the community the opportunity to imagine what we could do with this space that we would like to honor on the grounds of the park, but that right now not a lot is happening with.
Yeah, and when you talk about even preserving that history, talk to me a little bit for viewers who may not even be familiar of the history of enslaved Africans and their connection to the park.
Yeah, so there were a number of enslaved Africans that labored, worked inside of the house. A number of enslaved people actually dammed a body of water that is actually on Van Cortlandt Park. It was previously called Van Cortlandt Lake, but it's been renamed Hester and Piero's Mill Pond after two enslaved Africans that lived and worked on Van Cortlandt Plantation. And their lives and their history and their humanity really hasn't been brought to the forefront in a lot of ways. They were ridiculously skilled laborers. There's so much of the landscape of Van Cortlandt Park that would not be had it not been for these historical figures that are so important to the history of the park, but also the Bronx. And we really, really want to make sure that that's brought to the forefront.
Yeah, when you talk about bringing something like this and celebrating that history as well, what does that conversation look like and how much time to even get it to where you are now?
Yeah, so it's been a long time coming. There's been so much research, so much feedback and advocacy from the community. It's incredible the relationship that Van Cortlandt Park Alliance has with our greater community and parks goers who have made it really clear we want something more with this space. Actually, the reason why the space right now is even blocked off, because previously was actually open in the park, is because community members said, if this is an enslaved burial ground, we want you guys to take on the work of making sure that we're giving it the honor that it deserves and that people aren't just walking over it. So Van Cortlandt Park Alliance took that feedback and actually blocked off the space. Wow. And we've gotten even more feedback, which is what can we do with the space? Right now, not enough is being done. So often what we hear is, what's not being done. And this project is really an opportunity for the community to really imagine what they would want out of it.
Yeah, of course, when you mentioned earlier some of the partners that are involved with bringing something like this together, talk to me about the role that the Mellon Foundation plays in supporting this as well. We're
so grateful to the Mellon Foundation, who is funding phase 1 of this project, which is really the community engagement phase. They have been integral to us being able to work with Design Trust for Public Space on the project planning of the community engagement, to work with Emmanuel Oni on the breaking down of the arts integration pieces that we'll be doing throughout the process. And ultimately, the project will culminate with a design concept competition. So essentially, all of the feedback that we get from the community will ask a number of artists to take that and to reimagine a design concept for what the space could look like.
Yeah, and I mean, when you talk about that community part, even from just being able to block off because of their voices being heard, and what they wanted to kind of have and honor that space, but not to have their input in the design process. How important is that, and why is it important to have that?
It's so important because often communities, particularly marginalized communities, are not a part of the historical memorialization of spaces like this. We're trying to reverse engineer it. Typically what happens is a plaque, a statue, something is put up, and then it's, all right, here you are, and hope you like it, and this is our opportunity to memorialize this. And we really want to know, what does the greater diaspora community want? What does the indigenous community in the Bronx want? Projects like this, they are integral to the park, to the Bronx, but they really can be a stepping stone to even just like nationally change coming about on spaces like this.
Yeah, when we talk about being able to kind of have their input in the design process and just the process in general, what activities or events are kind of put in place right now to have them kind of share what they envision for the space?
Yeah, so we just had our annual Pinkster Festival this past Saturday. That actually is something that Van Cortlandt Park Alliance really likes to do, is to do cultural programming that really honors the history. So Pinkster was an Afro-Dutch holiday where enslaved Africans during this time period would have had an opportunity to really practice their traditions, come together in community and celebrate, because it was Pentecost, so it would have been a day that they had off from their labor. So that was one opportunity. We have barefoot dancing coming up on Saturday, June 7th. This is a completely free event, and it's an opportunity for you to get into expression and artistic practice. It's a wonderful way to bring about getting input from folks when they're working in community in a way like that. And we have our annual Juneteenth festival that's coming up on Thursday, June 19th. And we celebrated our first Juneteenth festival at Van Cortlandt Park Alliance in 2021. And that was the day that we actually put up our signage and renamed the Van Cortlandt Lake to Hester and Piero's Mill Pond, and the day that we actually put up the signage for the enslaved African burial ground. So that's always a really important event for us. We go about doing a libation ceremony, and then we utilize that as an opportunity in that large amount of community, because that event has just grown and grown and grown. It was the largest we ever had it last year, to really, in that moment, get the input from the community.
And I love that there's such an arts and culture and historical part of these events and celebrating them, but also getting that input. Excuse me, when we talk about even the input, is it just driven by local community members, residents, or is it kind of open as well, that input?
Oh yes, definitely open. We have these cultural events that are ways that we like to engage, a number of surveys that we'll be conducting, and we also are utilizing something called a legacy council. We have a smaller number of local artists, historians, folks from the diaspora community who are really partnering with all of us to make sure that we're moving in the right direction for all of the people within the wider network that we want represented through this project.
Yeah, now of course, there are also different collaborators. I was mentioning some of them. Obviously, we mentioned the Mellon Foundation, but also the NYC Parks, Design Trust for Public Space, and even an artist at that. How do you kind of all kind of come together to put something like this?
It's been a fantastic collaboration, really. So I would say Van Cortlandt Park Alliance, we have this relationship with the parks goers and this stewardship of the park. And then Design Trust for Public Space is really supporting us in terms of the project management and the community engagement piece. And then Emmanuel Oni is really working with us on the artistic integration throughout phase one, and making sure that we can really give to the community and get, because the last thing we want to do is just be, reaching out to the community and saying, give us information, give us information. We want to make sure they're getting something out of it as well.
Yeah, to see so many organizations and even artists believe in a mission like this, how does that feel?
It feels incredible, especially at a time like this where there's so much of, I would say maybe a negativity towards the arts and a lack of understanding of how powerful it can be and how much it can facilitate community and also community healing and acknowledgement. Acknowledgement is ridiculously powerful at a time like this, and making sure that people's histories are not erased.
When you talk about even that component of not erasing history, how do you hope the memorial and this process in general kind of helps educate maybe these newer generations or people who are kind of starting to fall in love with the Van Cortlandt Park? How do you hope that kind of inspires them or motivates them to kind of engage with the history?
Yeah, I hope that they walk away with an understanding of the humanity that can come about throughout the history. It's not just facts. Our history is felt, even if it's not spoken. And so, as I was saying previously, acknowledgement is so important, and is a powerful tool for us to be coming together at a time like this.
Yeah, when you talk about even history being felt, I think about even the impact that something like this can have. What do you think the impact could be, on the long history of the Van Cortlandt Park and in kind of the surrounding community as well from having something like this?
Yeah, I really think that it can bring about a collective healing. It's so interesting when we're engaging in any of the cultural programming or tours throughout the park surrounding the history, the stories that will come about, just an opportunity for people to share how the history relates to their present. It gives humanity to the historical figures, but it gives humanity to the people as well.
Yeah, and of course, with having something like this, and I keep going back to it, and from the beginning, when you mentioned even how the community kind of helped kind of section this part off, how important is it for public spaces like parks to talk about the history that is kept there? Why do you think something like that is important for our communities to speak up and say, hey, this is a part of history?
I think it's important for the community to speak up and to make themselves heard, because our past informs our present, informs our future. There's no way to run away from this history. We've got to work with it, and we've got to accept it, and it calls upon itself to be acknowledged. Now, there's ways that we can go about making sure that we're doing that with respect, which is ultimately what we're hoping to do, and what the Mellon Foundation is helping Van Cortlandt Park Alliance and Design Trust and ONI, what they're helping us to do. But it's something that asks to be faced. And so it's really important that the community utilize their voice and then also move towards facing it.
Yeah, what does the timeline look like now? Obviously, I'm assuming you're in this kind of community input in process and step. What is the timeline kind of?
Yeah,
for the rest of the
so
project?
phase one of this project is underway, and it's set to end at the end of next year, so the end of 2026.
And for people who want to kind of input, learn more about the initiatives, where should they go to check it out?
You can go to vancortland.org, and you can follow us on VCP Alliance on Instagram.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much again, Ashley,
Thank
for sharing
you.
this important knowledge with us and a great initiative that's happening in our community.
Thank you.
Yeah, so for our viewers, to learn more about this collaboration, please visit vancortland.org. We have to take a quick break. We'll be back with more Open after this.